New Galaxy Enterprises proudly presents Threshold Radio.
This is Johnny Bluestar. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience, rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication.
Welcome to Threshold. This is Johnny Bluestar, and today I'm joined by Kenneth, novelist, attorney, human rights and environmental activist, and Sarah Westall, host of the ever-intriguing radio odyssey, Business Game Changers, an enthusiastic explorer of business and technological disruption and paradigms of social change. Good morning, Ken and Sarah.
Good morning.
Well, today we're going to have a roundtable discussion about the recent and ongoing presidential primary campaigns. In this discussion, we'll discuss the conduct and issues presented by the candidates and analyze, in a sense, the various paradigms of government floating around. But while we're doing this, instead of just accepting one or another of these paradigms, we'll attempt to see if there are any other potentially valuable paradigms hidden in our back pockets. And also, what's hidden behind the paradigms presented by the candidates, which we think, or the audience would, in general, think that they're seeing clearly. It's obvious that this presidential campaign has been marked by some astounding changes, perhaps the most important being the energizing of voting in the primary elections and the introduction of new voters into the electioneering process. Significantly, the vast numbers of millennials in the Sanders campaign, along with what might be called the disaffected, largely Caucasian, and markedly angry following of Trump. Both men seem to be pulling in lots of independent voters, people who have seldom or never voted before, independents, and people who have crossed over from other parties to theirs. Bernie Sanders has demonstrated the ability to raise record-breaking amounts of money with very small change, challenging the PAC and wealthy individual donors that function heavily in Clinton's campaign. It would be disingenuous to admit the role of Donald Trump in coloring the nature of these campaigns, as he's inserted himself and has, in his own controversial style of electioneering, into almost every major issue. Sanders and Donald Trump are not quite friends, but I would like to start with this little comment by Donald Trump.
Imagine Bernie saying that Trump should get his people under control, and they put in these people. And by the way, our crowds are so much bigger than Bernie's, you wouldn't believe it. Not even. Troublemakers. They're Bernie fans. Remember when they took over the microphones from Bernie? Remember? They took over the microphones. Two young women took over the microphones, and he walked back like this, right? These are Bernie's people. Hillary cannot seem to win, even against the communists. I mean, how is it that in this great society in our great, great world, that a communist cannot be beaten by Hillary Clinton? It's terrible.
Putting aside this rich harvest of disparaging comments made in just 1 minute, let's just focus on the contention that Bernie is a communist. What do you make of this?
Well, I think that it's a theme that they want to get out there. All this stuff, again, is marketing messages, right? Hillary Clinton is calling him, she's saying he's not even a Democrat. And then Trump saying just flat, Trump just goes there. He's saying what everybody's saying behind the scenes, because you know that the Hillary campaign is calling him a communist as well, extreme socialist, but they're doing it in the political grassroots and everywhere else. They're not coming out on television and saying it. She's just saying he's not a Democrat. And then Trump comes out and calls him a communist because it sounds really bad.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds worse than a socialist.
They're collecting sound bites and just slapping them off. And Trump sounds to me like one of those extreme talk show hosts like Rush Limbaugh or something.
Or maybe Joe McCarthy.
Or even worse. I mean, it doesn't sound like somebody who expects to be elected president.
Well, let's note for the moment how Trump tends to label people and empower his following by repetition and even chanting of his labels. These are his sound bites. In fact, he's called Marco Rubio Little Marco, Ted Cruz Lion Ted, and now Hillary Clinton, in a special announcement, he gave her the name of Crooked Hillary. But since we're examining political paradigms today, let's return to Trump's focus on Sanders.
I watched Hillary last night with, we're going to give this, we're going to give that, we're going to give that. The poor woman, she's got to give everything away because this maniac that was standing on her right is giving everything away, so she's following. That's what's happening. This socialist / communist, okay? Nobody wants to say it. And nobody's heard the term communist. But you know what? I call him a socialist / communist, okay? Because that's what he is.
Well, this is very clear. We have two paradigms kind of blended in together, socialist and communist. These are very interesting labels used in various ways. For instance, Hitler's party was the Nationalist Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nationalsozialist Deutsche Arbeiterpartei. Yes, Hitler called his party socialist, and one of his greatest enemies was none other than the Soviet Union, or USSR, which stood for the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Hitler hated the communists almost as much as he did the Jews, but his party called itself socialist. And what about the kind of democratic socialism that Bernie stands for? Isn't this a completely different kind of socialism? This is the first time that the word socialism has been accepted in a national political campaign in a long time. Please help me disentangle these words, not just by their use, but also by the meaning that might stand behind them. What do you think?
Well, they're labels, Johnny. I mean, the meaning is whoever is using the label. It's different when Trump uses it. It's different when Sanders uses it, and it's not. It's not traditional. First of all, it's not communism. Okay, I think we can all agree on that, can't we?
Yeah, well, definitely. The trouble is that communism never was communism.
Yeah, but I mean, communism is a political ideology that doesn't have anything to do with what Sanders is promoting.
Right.
And there's something about these socialist principles that he's talking about, that the Democratic Party has always talked about these principles, but never called them with the label of socialism. They never said, we want to do a national health program, but when they advocated socialist medicine, which happens all the time, I mean, you hear it in every election year. You never hear it called socialized medicine. And now Bernie's drawing parallels to European countries that have national socialized medicine, which was pretty expensive. It entails a lot of taxing. But I think it depends on who's throwing out the label.
The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein said that the meaning is the use. And so, like you're saying, let's hear what Bernie himself says about it.
You call yourself a democratic socialist. How can any kind of socialist win a general election in the United States?
Well, we're going to win because first we're going to explain what democratic socialism is. And what democratic socialism is about is saying that it is immoral and wrong that the top 0.1% in this country own almost 90%, own almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. That it is wrong today in a rigged economy that 57% of all new income is going to the top 1%. That when you look around the world, you see every other major country providing health care to all people as a right, except the United States. You see every other major country saying to moms that when you have a baby, we're not going to separate you from your newborn baby because we are going to have medical and family paid leave like every other country on earth. Those are some of the principles that I believe in, and I think we should look to countries like Denmark, like Sweden, and Norway, and learn from what they have accomplished for their working people.
Well, that isn't actually a definition either. Certainly it's a commentary on some of the benefits of the form of government that he wants.
Well, I think we already have elements of socialism in our government. The problem is that socialism and communism drums up really negative thoughts because we think of communists as our enemy, the Soviet Union or Russia. And then we think of Stalin and all these bad things that, where they murdered all these people, and we think of a dictatorship and all these things. And then when we think of socialism, of course they bring up Hitler. Socialism doesn't mean you're going to go and mass murder people and try to take over the world. And that's why they use those terms, right? So if you can disassociate yourself with what those meanings are and get rid of those labels and then think about what he's trying to say, that's a different world, right? I mean, but the thing that scares people is that's what's in their brain. I mean, they're afraid that we're going to slide towards something like that. And, the problem with socialism is that somebody has to be making the decisions for everybody else. And that's where the problem comes in. And how do you have a democracy and socialism? Somebody still makes those decisions. So then once they get the power, they want to grab more and then more, and then there you go. And that's what, the slide towards that can be. But, of course, there's the ill effects of going the other direction as well. We got problems everywhere.
Yeah, and now I think also, Sarah, I think the reason why this election is so different than in the past is because people are saying, the people in power have really messed everything up. The privileged people are getting more than we're getting. And we don't have what our parents had after World War II or our grandparents. We don't have that kind of life. We don't have the American dream. We don't have basically what our legacy. It's been taken away from us, and we have that right. And I think that now we've got, instead of Sanders saying the old argument between less government and more government, Sanders is on the more government side, right? But they're not. But they're throwing labels out, so people are using those negative connotations in their mind when they hear those things, like Sarah said.
Let's go to a break with a clip from Patty Greer's wonderful song, May Peace Prevail on Earth.
May peace prevail on earth, and let the children sing. May peace be in our homes, a love that's very true. It all starts with me and
My company, New Galaxy Enterprises, is a California corporation specializing in the creation of media and promotional content. We are focused on original, innovative projects that are good for humanity. These projects could be nonfiction books or novels, fictional screenplays or documentary content, websites and website content, commercial advertising content for print, audio, or video products on the internet, television, or radio, musical scores for advertising, television, or film, video, audio editing, etc. We want to promote products and projects that support the environment, encourage a healthy experience in living, developing, nurturing, and useful technology, and offering platforms for positive, socially constructive entertainment or informative, transformative media. Our experience in creating a variety of products like this is rather vast, and we offer client-based and collaborative products, as well as the opportunity of active investors to join us in the creation and promotion of proprietary products, some of which are in latter stages of development. For more information, go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. That's www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. If you're interested in talking to us, just fill out the contact sheet and we will get back with you.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who was a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called dwarves, the youngest members of the stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy, we ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hands. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
Back to our discussion of socialism versus capitalism. The question is, what is the proper blend between socialism and capitalism? Should high taxes turn us away from providing a society like Denmark, where entrepreneurship is alive amidst free college education, free health care? It is one of the lowest rates of wealth inequality in the developed countries. And yeah, it has free college, health care, and subsidized child care. And yes, they pay more taxes. The Danish pay as much as 56% as their top rate, where our top rate is around 39.6.
Yeah, but Johnny, don't you think we're being taxed to death too? I mean, and we're not getting anything from it.
Yeah.
As far
well,
as,
if we could analyze what we're paying in our education and what we're paying in our health care and add that to our tax base, are we paying more than the Danish are at their top rate? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's a good analysis to do.
And then you can say, okay, are we really? But see, we have. The problem is that our 39%, even if you subtract out the education and the healthcare, which, I mean, in order to stabilize apples to apples, you have to do that, right? You have to add back in what we pay for education and healthcare. But the problem is a substantial amount of our budget is on waste and fraud and BS and things that...
And military spending and things like that.
Military out of control, right? We have a base of like 20% on the military, but then of the other 40% of our budget, 45%, something like that, a substantial amount of that is still military built into other aspects of the budget that's not obvious to people.
Maybe the people who get the military benefits should be paying for this military instead of the taxpayers.
Well, there's just, let's be smart about it. And that's where I like the idea. I know people don't like Trump, but I like the idea of somebody that can come in with more of a business mindset and say, okay, what are our goals? What are we, who are we trying to serve? And let's start cutting this thing apart and making it work. And that's the problem I have. And people are afraid of business people because, again, business people have a connotation of being greedy, people that only care about making money, right? But you need a mindset of these are the things that we're trying to get accomplished and laser focus of getting it done, because I think we could cut the budget by 30% and be really healthy.
Well, I want to look at this from a little different standpoint, particularly, since, Sarah, you're so involved with disruptive paradigms. The problem that I see is that the education that we're getting, and that's probably provided in Denmark too, and the health care, possibly in at least many of these European countries, it is totally inadequate. Like Ken, we've talked a lot about this since our program on genetic engineering and your book, The Voluntary Spy, and in other programs, we've discussed the dangers of the medical pharmaceutical complex. Now, that is definitely a place where a lot of money is spent. Yes, maybe we're paying too much for these some of these pharmaceuticals, and it's cheaper in Canada. But the problem is that a lot of across the board, a lot of these pharmaceuticals are not really very good for us. They're just covering up some of the problems and disastrous health conditions that we have because of the food that we eat. Do you agree?
Yes, it's true. I agree.
If we change the whole paradigm of research and of medicine and food and all those things, aren't we going to save a heck of a lot of money?
Well, we would. I mean, but then the oversight system is there. I mean, it's there. The problem is that the people who are in the oversight agencies, like the USDA, the EPA, and the FDA, who are supposed to keep our environment and our food and our drugs safe, are not actually doing that. They're working for the chemical companies. They're coming from the chemical companies.
And that's the problem when the government gets to the point where they're working for the companies instead of the people. And that's the fear. I mean, we're turning into a fascist sort of society, and that's the fear. I mean, any form of government can work if you don't do stuff like that. You can't be a fascist system where you are serving the needs of a corporation making a profit versus the needs of the people. You have to be very clear of who you're serving and what you're trying to get accomplished. And when the government gets bloated and it's serving the wrong purpose and the power figures go in the wrong direction, you get what we get now.
But they wave the flag and pretend they're going in the right direction. That's the thing. That's the deceit.
But that's what happens in every election and every.
Oh yeah.
That's
Well, you see, my problem here is the financial thing. Is that the financial thing? Whether we go Bernie's way or we go with these lines around the different states, which lets everybody compete, which is supposed to solve the problem, but will leave probably millions of people uninsured. It doesn't matter because it's not just a financial problem. But let's listen to how Trump and Rubio argue about this for a minute.
You may not be aware of this, Donald, because you don't follow this stuff very closely, but here's what happened. When they passed Obamacare, they put a bailout fund in Obamacare. All these lobbyists to keep talking about, they put a bailout fund in the law that would allow public money to be used, taxpayer money, to bail out companies when they lost money. And we led the effort and wiped out that bailout fund. The insurance companies are not in favor of me. They hate that. They're suing now to get that bailout money put back in. Here's what you didn't hear in that answer, and this is important, guys. This is an important thing. What is your plan? I understand the lines around the state, whatever that means. This is not a game where you draw maps
and you
around.
Don't know what it
what
means.
is your plan?
That's the problem.
What is your plan on health care? You don't have a plan.
The biggest problem he doesn't know. The biggest problem he's got is he doesn't know. You know, I watched him melt down 2 weeks ago with Chris Christie. I got to tell you, the biggest problem he's got is he really doesn't know about the lines. The biggest thing we've got, and the reason we have no competition, is because we have lines around the state, and you have essentially
we already mentioned that as part of my plan. I know what that is. But what else is part of your plan? So your only thing is to get rid of the lines around the states. What else is part of your health care plan?
What the lines around the states mean.
That's your only
plan.
plan.
And it was almost done. No. You know what that does?
I'll
that
give
brings
him time
in
of mind. He can tell us his plan.
Excuse me. That brings in competition. When you get rid of the lines, it brings in competition. So instead of having one insurance company taking care of New York or Texas, you'll have many. They'll compete, and it'll be a beautiful thing.
Right. And so that's the only part of the plan? Just the lines, the interstate competition?
No, the nice part about the plan, you'll have many different plans. You'll have competition. You'll have so many different plans.
But now he's repeating himself.
No, I'm not repeating. No.
You don't repeat yourself.
Here's the guy who repeats himself.
You repeat yourself every day.
I watched him, talking about repeating, I watched him repeat himself 5 times 4 weeks ago. And
I saw you repeat yourself 5 times 5 seconds ago.
I watched him melt down on the stage like I've never seen anybody. I thought he came out of the swimming pool.
I said, well,
let's talk about your plan.
I see him repeat himself every night. It says 5 things. Everyone's dumb. He's going to make America great again. We're going to win, win, win. He's winning in the polls. And the lines around the state. Every night. Same thing.
Senator Rubio.
I tell the truth.
Senator Rubio, you will have time to respond. If you would just let Mr. Trump respond to what you just posed to him.
Yeah, he's going to give us his plan now, right?
If you could talk a little bit more about your plan. I know you talked about the interstate.
We're going to have many different plans because there's going to be competition.
Said it again.
There's going to be competition. There is going to be competition among all of the states and the insurance companies. They're going to have many, many different plans.
Is there anything else you would like to add to that?
No, there's nothing to add. What's to add?
I just realized that they get their playbook from watching old Abbott and Costello films.
Oh. You know, I think they're both right. You know, Donald's articulating a basic principle of free market theory of, you know, if you lower barriers on competition, it makes products and services cheaper. But then Rubio's is saying, well, Donald, you can't even articulate your plan. And he's right. He can't.
Well, the problem is he's not going to be able to articulate it in a minute anyways, but
no.
You know, it's not going to happen. And I'm not sure if Rubio really articulated anything either, but the, free market is what people are trying to take, that we don't have that right now.
No,
and that's
we don't.
a big issue. And that's what he's trying to say is if we actually got these companies to compete, if you look at how laser eye surgery, they've all been competing with each other. And it's amazing how much better, how much cheaper, how great the services come, for everyone, because it was a free market competitive type surgery. Mm-hmm. And, that's such a great thing to point to. But, I like what Johnny was saying, okay, we can do free market and we really do need to go do free market. But then what do you do with the people that can't afford healthcare? So it almost like there needs to be almost a hybrid. A bucket. Yeah, a bucket, for the people that get, fall out of the system. But you definitely need the free market going on. Otherwise, there's a race to the bottom.
Otherwise, it's going to be, it's going to be all the same thing we have now with the cronies coming in with all the people in government getting getting their favoritism, and it's not going to do anything to lower prices.
Yeah, and it's not even just prices. You have to let
quality.
You have to let somebody come in that has a good idea come in and get a chance, because the way it is right now, when it's a fascist system, the only people that have a chance are the ones who are already in control and power. They have no incentive. They have no incentive to get better. They have no incentive to lower prices. What about this person over here that has this great, new form that a lot of consumers would like? Give him a chance to compete and show it. If it doesn't work, then he won't be successful. And that's the beauty of a free market. I interview people. I interviewed a company that's on the Bahama Islands working with adult human stem cells that are regrowing muscle tissue and working with MS and getting people out of wheelchairs and doing this phenomenal work. I mean, they're taking people that couldn't walk, that practically paralyzed, and getting them out of wheelchairs. And it's illegal in this country because we have an FDA that's in bed with corporations.
Yeah.
And now if we had a free market open society, those people, that company, Okineos, is what it is, and you can listen to my show, they'd be competing freely in this country and people could be served. But the way it is now, it's a joke. And so free market's really important. However, how do you deal with the people that are falling out of the system? And that's kind of what we want, need to talk about. But then there's that concern that if you take care of all the people that follow the system, then there's the attitude that people will, if you're just going to give out handouts anyways, then people would rather just take a handout than to work hard. So you got to figure out that's problem. But like Jesus said, I don't know if you're religious, but he's right here. There's always going to be the poor and the needy and the people that need our help. And so you have to figure out how to take care of some of those people.
Here's a clip of the great Patricia Welch with a song featured in her 3-set CD album, Great Entertainment, Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia.
What do you get when you fall in love? A guy with a pin to burst your bubble. That's what you get for all your trouble. I'll never fall in love again. I'll never fall in love again. What do you get when you kiss a guy? You get enough germs to catch pneumonia. After you do, he'll never phone ya. I'll never fall in love again. Don't you know that I'll never fall in love again? Don't tell me what it's all about, 'cause I've been there and I'm glad I'm out of those chains that bind you. That is why I'm here to remind you, what do you get when you fall in love? You only get lies and pain and sorrow. So for at least until never fall in love again. No, no, I'll never fall in love again.
This is Johnny Bluestar. I've worked as a lyricist with Patricia Welch for over 5 years, along with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens, a friend and colleague. Her ability as a singer is simply amazing. She brings a unique and dramatic flair to every song she sings. Over the next few months, we shall be releasing a number of these songs, part of an album called Hadley's Castle. Meanwhile, Patricia has been busy creating a super enjoyable collection of classic standards in an exciting 46-song, 3-CD collection.
Music for Great Entertaining introduces Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia Welch. 3 hours of continuous music. 46 of the all-time classic standards, spanning decades of hit songs. Going to a friend's home for dinner? Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia also makes the perfect hostess gift. This 3-CD compilation is the perfect background music that sets just the right mood for any dinner party.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy.
To purchase this album, just go to patriciawelch.com/CD. That is patriciawelch.com/CD. You won't be disappointed. Nowadays, if you are a serious business person, just getting assistance from someone with a license and a bit of experience may not be sufficient. In fact, your realtor actually needs to be knowledgeable enough to be one of your top advisors. Whether you are facilitating a giant merger or selling your company, there's a lot at stake besides your finances. There is the future value of your current investment, financial freedom, integrity, and overall reputation. If you need this kind of assistance, Sandra LaFlamme is a real estate expert with the experience, reputation, and knowledge qualified to assist you in all your key transactions. Sandra LaFlamme, real estate services with integrity and conscience. Contact her today at 888-366-8070. That's Sandra LaFlamme at 888-366-8070. We're back on Threshold Radio discussing the paradigm of healthcare in America with Ken Eade and Sarah Westall. Let's hear a little bit about how Sanders and Clinton approached the subject.
Let's just replay clip 32, Jim, first of all, to set this up for somebody who might have just tuned in, so they might not know what we're talking about. This is, Senator Sanders has proposed as a healthcare plan that basically we just take Obamacare and set it aside and say anybody in America can buy into Medicare, period. You can keep the Affordable Care Act. You can keep your health insurance if you want, but everybody can buy into Medicare. You've got Medicare for everybody in the United States. And pretty much everybody's going to do that because it's going to cost 20% less than than health insurance right now. But actually, I'm misstating that because I said anybody can buy into Medicare. What he's saying is that Medicare is provided for free out of our tax dollars. So, in other words, everybody's taxes go up by the amount that it would cost you to buy into Medicare, which is 20 to 30% less than what you're paying right now for health insurance. So, first of all, here's Hillary attacking Bernie's plan. This is clip 32.
I have looked at his proposed plans for health care, for example, and it really does transfer every bit of our health care system, including private health care, to the states to have the states run. And I think we've got to be really thoughtful about how we're going to afford what we propose.
And here's the clip 33. This is Senator Sanders responding.
You know that the United States per capita pays far and away more than any other country. And it is unfair simply to say how much more the program will cost without making sure that people know we are doing away with the cost of private insurance and that the middle class will be paying substantially less for health care under single payer than under Secretary Clinton's proposal.
Well, I'd like to say a few things. I believe that the American people who have been accustomed to various options outside of the single-payer system do not realize how completely steeped in fear they are because they have only sound bites to think about when they hear about some other health systems, like in Scandinavia, but also in France and Germany, and even Cuba, as Michael Moore reports in his comic tragedy documentary about healthcare called Sicko. One of the problems is that our health system is deeply flawed because of the infusion of destructive technology into our food supply, our medical practices, and their application. So dealing with modern medicine without some kind of self-acquired knowledge of alternative medicine can be very dangerous. In fact, I nearly died because of an asthmatic condition that was cured once I found out it was nutritionally based. I was told it was incurable by conventional medical doctors. Secondly, because of the system we live in without medical insurance, any serious illness can drive even fairly prosperous people into bankruptcy. Thirdly, when people are approaching death, if not properly protected, the medical establishment swoops in and scoops up all the financial marbles it can from the dying patient who can now not pass on his good fortune to his family. Our current system fills Americans with a sense of dread and fear, and mostly they know nothing about alternatives. How can we get them to think about this, to be open to alternatives? I do like Bernie Sanders, and I like his ideas in a lot of ways. As long as there's an option for people to buy extra insurance for themselves, I'm okay with a universal medical. But what is it? It's extremely dangerous.
I think you made a good point about the system itself. The way it's set up now is we medicate symptoms to solve health problems once the symptoms arrive. But the focus should really be on proper nutrition and exercise and lifestyle to prevent those symptoms from, occurring in the first place.
But what do you do? Because, my sister's a doctor and we've had many conversations about this. And she's like, Sarah, I don't have a choice. 75, maybe 70%, but a large majority of the people just want some kind of pill or something to take care of the problems. If I sit and lecture them on nutrition, which is what they need, they just won't come back. And so I do what I can, but essentially the majority of the people don't want to hear it. They don't want to do preventative care. I mean, I don't know. I think there's maybe 30, 25% of the people that are like us that are thinking, how do I, eat right, nutrition, and trying to figure these things out. And I think the mass population isn't in that boat. I don't think
they want to take a pill.
I don't think they're even thinking about it.
I think that there are several things that democratic socialism does, and one of them has to do with education, where I have the same problem. The kind of education that I see and I believe is spread out throughout the world is not genuinely the best kind of education. It's not, and as we discussed, remember a long time ago, Ken, we discussed the interactive education. Well, I never heard one word about alternative approach to nutrition when I went to school. I went to 3 different colleges, one for 3.5 years and the others for a few years. And no one ever talked about it in high school or elementary school. Of course, there is much more known about it. It's a little bit more public now that there's a complementary alternative medicine and nutrition, but it's still, the only way you can really deal with this is you have to totally counteract the sort of advertising that exists for food products. You walk into a supermarket, and what can you do? You cannot go anywhere in a supermarket without 90% of this food being doctored, more than 90%, I would say.
Well, and the less expensive stuff is the worst stuff. You have to pay more. Yeah, you have to pay more for better food.
Yes, and particularly, and it's very important to have organic food. And
but it's more expensive.
But it's sometimes
more expensive, and
there's less a demand for it.
Well, there's multiple problems with organic food, and that is that we don't have the resources. I mean, we don't have the land to do everything organically. I mean, there's some bigger issues there because I've done some research on that. And, I try to eat organic as much as possible as well. But if you really wanted to implement that across our whole, country, we just don't have the resources to actually do that anymore.
Well,
there's some issues.
Maybe I see your point, but I also think that there may be some ways of rejuvenating the soil.
I think the whole industrial chemical agricultural system is completely corrupt and poisons the entire food supply. That's my take on it.
Well,
And
I think that's true.
If we were just open and transparent about the issues, maybe there's some other, hydroplant, how do you pronounce that?
Hydroponic.
Yeah, I don't know why you can't pronounce that. But I mean, if we were transparent about it and we start talking about what are some technology innovations that we can come up with to really take care of our issues. I know there's really smart people working on these things and they have come up with innovations and things, but they don't want to have the funding and it's all private and small.
And they don't have the voice. They don't have the voice.
Yes. Yeah.
See, this is my big point here. In all the stuff talking about these campaigns and these different issues, we need a gigantically new, comprehensive paradigm of a society, of a just and well-working society. You cannot talk about pharmaceuticals without talking about food. You can't talk about food and pharmaceuticals without talking about medicine.
Yeah, but yet we do, Johnny. Yet we do.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that's the issue.
Yeah.
I mean,
that is the issue.
That is one of the issues. One of the major issues. Yes.
So what I'm saying is that,
and when what Bernie says about getting providing free education, I mean that's a great start. But what's the curriculum going to be? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about getting the issues out in the open and getting the information out there so people can actually know what's going on.
I mean, to be honest, almost everything that has been valuable for me that I've learned and has been out of school. It's been I used to go to high school and I basically would walk into the class with my own books and I would ignore them. I was told I could quit high school by my college admissions officer, and my parents.
I went in to quit, and they sent me down the street to the junior college and kept me on the payroll.
That's funny.
It was.
So I dropped out from the advanced curriculum to the lower curriculum, so I could just have some peace, so I could read while they were talking about other things.
Good for you.
Yeah, but the thing is, we don't have a system. We have all kinds of things that are wrong, and if we did the kind of health prioritization we were talking about and the kind of education that we're talking about we could be using computers. Everybody could get a university, some kind of a degree and have real good stuff without having to go to these schools and stay in class all the time. There could be some interactive stuff with the class, but a lot of it could be done on computers, and it wouldn't cost hardly anything.
Oh, we are on the verge of a complete changeover of everything. And that's when we have the tools and that's part of the issue too, is there's so much change going on, and there's so much, I see it as a new renaissance, actually. I think there's so much we can do, and there's so many cool things.
I think. It's a potential for great things, but look at what happened with television. It was the same. People were saying the same thing about television, and they were right. That was the biggest potential education tool ever. And look what happened. And now
it is an education tool.
And and now we've got the internet where people are getting most of their information now, and it's being abused, and people are playing video games instead of learning. They're getting addicted to their iPhones, and there's a whole set of problems that comes with this great technology that should be helping us do all these great things.
Here's a clip from my great friend from UK, Stephanie Slevin, in I Talk with Angels.
I talk to angels, and they speak to me. They show me things that I don't usually see. Well, 'cause somewhere in heaven, God looks down with love, showing off mankind. But we just push and shove one another to the ground, making unholy sound. But if you want to talk to angels, you gotta spread your heart around every town. I saw an angel at the end of my bed. He looked at me, but not a word was said. Well, 'cause somewhere in heaven, God believed in me, as he does us all. Just awaits us to see he is there, everywhere, all around, every town. Yes, I talk to angels, and they speak to me. They lead me places they want me to be. Well, 'cause somewhere in heaven God looks down with love, showing us mankind. But we just push and shove one another to the ground, making unholy sound. But if you want to talk to angels, you gotta spread your heart around every town, every town.
New Galaxy Enterprises is a media company specializing in wide-ranging content like novels, nonfiction books, screenplays, commercial advertising, web content, etc. One of our most esteemed providers is illustrator Robert W. Zalo. I work on all my most important projects like book covers, logos, web design elements with Robert. As an illustrator, he worked on the Ignatz-nominated comic book, The Expert's Guide to Killing Things That Go Bump in the Night. His skills encompass advertising, magazine illustrations, gaming, comic books, TV production, and scenic painting. His clients include Comcast, Adelphia, Haven Talent, ForceWorks, High Octane Theater, Star Creative Advertising. If you wish to contact Robert, go to JohnnyBlueStar.com and let me know. That's JohnnyBlueStar.com. For artist, illustrator Robert Zalo, an essential component of all the work we do. Maybe he can help you too.
It is the 15th century. El Tesoro de Cielo, a Spanish treasure ship, sends a scouting expedition to a strange island. Golden statues surrounding them prove the enormity of their find. Suddenly, hordes of ghoulish creatures with scaly green flesh and skeletal wings descend upon them from the sky.
What do you think of this, Rufio?
These creatures are fragile, Captain. We can take them with our swords.
They seem supernatural. Who knows what powers they possess?
Fallen angels, weakened by their treason.
By God! Are you saying they're Nephilim, the devil's host?
I'm saying, whatever they are, we can take them. Do any of you cowards dare join me?
Up against sharp knife-like nails and hideous fangs, the men's swords rip into slimy green flesh. Though black blood pours copiously from their half-naked bodies, the creatures miraculously persist. Can the crew survive this bloody, cursed battle?
Find out more by Googling The Thrice Born, a new sci-fi supernatural novel by Carlos Lopez Avery and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born. That's Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born.
Well, but how do you deal with the masses not wanting to do it? I mean, I don't know how you deal with that.
You have to deal with it through.
Back to my sister, you know, where she can't solve their medical problems because they don't care.
We need people like her educating, and you got to make education entertaining, or no one's going to sit through it. I mean, that's the whole basis of my books. I mean, they're people sometimes will say, well, they get through the book and they're like, well, this guy's trying to lecture to me. You know, well, yeah, I'm a political novelist. Of course I'm trying to lecture to you. I have a point. You know, it's all this, to this story that's going to entertain you, and the guy's going to shoot everybody. In the end, you're going to learn something.
You're addressing their emotions, their conscience, as well as their sort of intellectual faculties.
But it's so hard for a doctor. You know, they're essentially a McDonald's drive-through now with all these clinics. They have to get through. You know, my sister consciously takes in a lot less patients than up to like half the patients of some of the other doctors, because she just refuses to be a complete McDonald's drive-through. But she still is, right?
Yeah, she doesn't want to be a drug pusher, right?
Yeah, I mean, she just doesn't want. She's like, I gotta serve people better than this. I can't have 6 minutes per person. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? I want my 12. You know, which is still ridiculous. So, you know, but, you know, kudos to her for trying to do something, you know, ethical. And even what she's doing that's ethical still isn't good enough in a lot of cases. But the problem is that's what they're expected to do in order for them to make a living. And then, you know, and then they have to actually solve this person's health problem. But then they're needing to educate them in a, you know, in an entertaining way. It's just not. There's a certain point where people need to take responsibility for themselves.
Can't she juggle while she's listening to their heart and lungs?
They have to take responsibility for themselves at some point. You have to say, okay, if you aren't going to take responsibility for yourself, and we'll supply these certain amount of things for you and give you the tools that if you take then those people get left in the dust at a certain point because they have the means to do it themselves. And I don't know if everybody else owes it to them. Now, we do owe it to people that can't take care of themselves. I think that's an ethical requirement, like Jesus says, where there's always going to be the people you need to take care of. But the people that can take care of themselves, I'm sorry, but we need to move on. We have our resources that need to be used in other ways.
Well, I think that, this whole conversation, returning to the candidates, is that I want to say, just like the health situation and the way these candidates are talking about it, if they talk about immigration, healthcare, policies about war, the safeguarding of our civil rights, military intervention, regime change, interrogation, handling of prisoners, protecting our borders, regrowing our economy, all these different things that they're talking about, to me, a lot of them are extremely limited and are extremely flawed in one way or another. It leaves, how are we going to fix owing $18 trillion? Or how come when
we default?
I think I've heard only one question. I think I heard one question. I'm not even sure if that was my fantasy about surveillance in this whole, debate situation. They're not even talking about it. Rand Paul might have talked about it, but he didn't.
He's out.
He's out, but he didn't talk about when he was there. He wasn't talking about the things that he was really seemed to be critically concerned about, I guess because he was trying to appeal to a more of a mass audience. I don't know his reason. But the point is that
I think Donald kind of set the stage for what was going to be talked about on the Republican side.
So what I'm saying is we really do need new paradigms, new ways of looking at things. We need to think these things out differently than these candidates are because they're not really thinking them out. And then there's problems about the way they're presenting whatever good thoughts they have because they've got 1.5 minutes to present them in the debates at least.
Right.
I think
But the good thing is that there is this interest in what's going on, which we didn't really see before. It was kind of like we felt powerless. And our vote doesn't count. And now I think people think, well, maybe my vote will count. Maybe someone's listening to me. And I'm encouraged by that. I mean, I think it's a start. What happens after this, I don't know.
If you like Threshold Radio, a program which deals with core issues affecting our personal, political, and spiritual lives, and advocates the creation of an enlightened, informed citizenry, not only in America, but throughout the world, then you might think of supporting both your product and business and our message by advertising on our show. All programs are archived and are supported in various ways, including social media, our outreach being broadcast weekly on VegasAllNetRadio.com, a very advanced internet broadcasting station, but also archived directly on our websites, on YouTube and in SoundCloud. We believe in time we will have a very broad outreach. Through New Galaxy Enterprises, our parent company, we can create a wide range of marketing and advertising components to complement your advertising on Threshold Radio and increase your outreach in many creative and exciting ways. If interested, just go to www.thresholdradio.com and fill out a contact form with your interest. That's www.thresholdradio.com.
Join us in a few minutes for our continuing discussion of the 2015-2016 presidential primary campaigns. We go out with Patricia Welch's rendition of Evergreen.
Fresh as the morning air, one love that is shared by two, I have found with you, like a rose April snow. I was always certain love would grow. Love, ageless and evergreen, seldom seen but two. You and I will make each night a first. Every day a beginning. Spirits rise and their dance is unrehearsed. They warm and excite us, 'cause we have the brightest love, two lights that shine as one.
We're back with political novelist and attorney Ken Eade and business consultant, talk show host of Business Game Changers, Sarah Westall, discussing the 2015-2016 presidential campaigns. Before the break, we were remarking how popular Sanders and Trump are for taking on the establishment. I, like Sarah and Ken, feel this is the result of the American people feeling that they are being pushed against the wall. How would you describe this point in time, Ken?
This is Johnny Blue Star. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication.
When you come to a point like that in big societies, big governments, like the United States, revolution is what happens. Revolution is what will undo everything. When people think they're getting screwed, they don't take it anymore. And that's what's going to happen if we don't do something.
Well, and there's a lot of people that are unhappy with where it's going, and people on all sides of the spectrum, as far as they just want things to be fair. They don't want the fraud. They want, people who are in the free market, more libertarian view sense, they don't like the fraud either. People who are more socialists, who want government, they don't want the fraud either. Nobody wants the fraud and the controls that are in place. They want innovation. They want people to be able to, they want human beings and our things. We want to be able to evolve and to be able to take hold of all this new stuff that's coming out, and we're being held back because of the fraud and the corruption.
So maybe, Sarah, maybe it's a good thing that people are becoming more interested in listening to these debates, and discussing these issues, because now with the tools that we're talking about on the internet, you can go and you can see how your congressman votes on something. And if you disagree, you can call them, you can email them, you can vote them out, you can organize, and I think it's a start of something that could be good.
I think it is.
I agree. I agree.
Even with Trump, because Trump brings up a lot of important points.
Yep.
And we'll get to more.
He does, but I just
not important policies, important points.
Yeah, points.
Well, and you guys do know that the opposition to Trump are planting. Some of the real radical people are actually planted by the Democratic side, and so the politics behind the scenes are really brutal. I mean, Trump is just more in your face, but as far as what they're doing behind the scenes, it's not cleaner and nicer.
No, it's not. And and if you listen to someone who I really respect, like Jimmy Carter, he says if you listen to Governor Lindsay, he says, well, between Trump and Cruz, it's like, what would you rather do, be shot or take poison? Well,
I heard I heard somebody have posted, what STD would you rather have?
Exactly. But if you listen to someone like Carter, who says, well, Cruz was really too extreme, so I'd take Trump. If you listen to someone like that, who has a head on his shoulders and knows what he's talking about, and who's been in the trenches and who's had, the whole system against him and had to rail against it, it's quite a thing. But I mean, the guy is just too game show host for me. He doesn't sound like a president. I think a president really doesn't do everything himself. Has a whole team of people that does everything, but he's the spokesman. He has to sound like a president. He's the one that goes and talks to the kings and the queens and the prime ministers of other countries. He can't be telling people, to their face that they're a bunch of assholes and we're going to keep a wall against them or whatever.
He can't go do tea time with the queen, behaving like that.
No, he can't. He can't, and he's got to go talk to the king of Saudi Arabia. And we know there's a whole bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes. He can't be telling him like it is to his face, because it's just not going to work in the rule of international relations. I mean,
well, yeah.
Unless he wants to bring the army with him everywhere he goes.
I listened to his daughter talk. She's doing a lot of his campaign management, and she's very articulate and she's very good. And
she'll probably be in his cabinet.
Well, yeah, who knows? But I was really surprised. When you listen to his children talk and you listen to the people around him, they're really level-headed. So you wonder. And then somebody was trying to dig up trash on him, and they can't find much trash on him. They were trying to.
I know, but it's Sarah. When you're
all you have to do is listen to him, and you get.
I agree. But my point is they tried to, all the people he went to high school with and stuff. Everyone said positive things about him, like he was a good guy. And so you wonder, what the heck? And then
he just doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, he's talking about putting nuclear weapons on the Southeast Asian islands. I mean, crazy.
In Japan.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, a lot of that is, but when you look at what some of these other campaigns are doing behind the scenes, it's just as bad. It's just not.
It's always been. Yeah, they just are hiding it. They're sneaky about it.
Yes, and so that's what you have to realize, that okay, this is the only person I think, and I don't agree with his policies at all. The only person I think that's actually a good guy is Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
But I don't know if I agree with. I don't think he has the business, background. I'm a business person, right? And I see that you have to. I mean, when you're talking about $1 trillion budget and you're running a country, you have to be able to understand those elements. So I don't think he has that. However, he is very sincere and a good person, and maybe that's what you look for. I don't know. But he's been
in government, But I agree. I think that government needs more of a business approach. I don't think there's anyone in our national government, in the top of tiers of it anyway, who really can do any of that. I think they're all serving their own interests. I mean, basically. So
yeah, we need more people like that. Well, you really do. Instead of having, I know there's attorneys out there listening to the show, but you can't just have attorneys running our country. You have to have people from the business sectors.
Yeah, we don't use the correct side of our brain.
The thing is,
I can't balance a checkbook. I'm an attorney, but I can't balance a checkbook. We need accountants in there, man. You got to get those accountants in there.
Well, I'd like to turn to an aspect of things that is directly connected with business, which is trade agreements. I think it's true that both where Sanders and Trump both agree is that these trade agreements have been disastrous. I don't particularly feel like there's an easy answer, but let's just listen to what Perot said in 1992 when he brought this up before it became so obvious.
The candidates will have an opportunity to make a closing statement. So, President Bush, I think you said it earlier, let's get it on.
Let's go.
And I think the first question is over here.
Yes, I'd like to direct my question to Mr. Perot.
What will you do as president to open foreign markets to fair competition from American business and to stop unfair competition here at home from foreign countries so that we can bring jobs back to the United States?
That's right at the top of my agenda. We've shipped millions of jobs overseas, and we have a strange situation because we have a process in Washington where after you've served for a while, you cash in, become a foreign lobbyist, make $30,000 a month, then take a leave, work on presidential campaigns, make sure you got good contacts, and then go back out. Now, if you just want to get down to brass tacks, first thing you ought to do is get all these folks who've got these one-way trade agreements that we've negotiated over the years and say, fellas, we'll take the same deal we gave you. And they'll gridlock right at that point because, for example, we've got international competitors who simply could not unload their cars off the ships if they had to comply. You see, if it was a two-way street, just couldn't do it. We have got to stop sending jobs overseas. To those of you in the audience who are business people, pretty simple. If you're paying $12, $13, $14 an hour for factory workers, and you can move your factory south of the border, pay $1 an hour for labor, hire a young 25, that's assuming you've been in business for a long time, you've got a mature workforce. Pay $1 an hour for your labor, have no health care, that's the most expensive single element making a car, have no environmental controls, no pollution controls, and no retirement, and you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south. So if the people send me to Washington, the first thing I'll do is study that 2,000-page agreement and make sure it's a two-way street. One last point here. I decided I was dumb and didn't understand it, so I called a who's who of the folks who've been around it. And I said, why won't everybody go south? They said, we'll be disruptive. I said, for how long? I finally got them up for 12 to 15 years. And I said, well, how does it stop being disruptive? And that is when their jobs come up from $1 an hour to $6 an hour and ours go down to $6 an hour, then it's leveled again. But in the meantime, you've wrecked the country with these kinds of deals. We've got to cut it out.
Thank you, Mr. Perot.
Well, I think that's pretty much close to what we've been talking about, needing some business people, right?
Well, yeah, it's obvious that he knew what business people will do. He knows the motivations. And it's because that's what business people are charged to do. But if you get them in government and they're charged to do something else, like take care of our country, they're going to see that's a bad deal.
Yeah.
I think it's not a black and white situation of how NAFTA affected the country. You know, but on one hand, factories have closed down and moved overseas, and that's hurt communities, you know, in the Rust Belt. On the other hand, I mean, the companies are going international. We basically have a world economy now, and they were moving in that direction anyway, and we've got to compete with other companies in other countries who are going to make products cheaper. The thing is, we do everything by cronyism and special interests, and and we've got certain principles we have to live by. I don't want to take clothes that have been made by child labor. I don't want to. There's things that there's principles that we have to maintain, that in negotiating these agreements, there has to be those certain principles, but that's all thrown out the window when the cronies are doing it.
That's the problem, is getting people who are just ethical in there. I mean, how do we get people that are going to be doing things for the right reason? But the problem is, if they don't do things for the right reason, then the corporate, the fascist state takes you out. Takes
over. But the thing is that the solution is not putting tariffs on imported goods. That's just going to make prices go up for average consumer, and that's just going to make Joe Blow's market budget higher when he goes to buy the things he has to buy.
But how do you deal with it then? Because you have to do something. Then maybe you put laws in place. If you are doing these kinds of practices, we won't buy from you. I don't know.
I think it's complicated. The agreements, you've got to put. It is complicated, but when you negotiate these agreements, you have to put certain provisions in them, like any other contract. And these are the things that have to be respected. These are the absolute minimums that we're going to have to watch, and there are certain things that have to be in there to prevent that.
I've worked with Russian composer Edgar Arendt for quite a few years, building an inventory of songs, many of which feature singer-performer Patricia Welch. We will soon be releasing these songs, components of an album and a musical in progress called Hadley's Castle. When Edgar and I first got together, I was amazed by the brilliance of his musical scores created for movies, TVs, and animations. Here is a sample of the work he did on the Russian TV series, available now on Amazon, called The Secret Agent's Memoir, which had 2 seasons. This score is called Escape and was created for the first season. I am very pleased to say that Bridge of Light Productions, a division of New Galaxy Enterprises, is proud to be the contact point for television and film companies seeking information about this amazing composer's work. If you are in the entertainment business and wish to know more, contact me at johnnybluestar@gmail.com. That's johnnybluestar@gmail.com. Back on Threshold with Ken Eade and Sarah Westall, Ken was saying how, in order to try and find some fairness in trade agreements, we need to put in place some criteria to prevent us from exploiting foreign labor. Well, I think you have to be concerned about these other countries. And maybe you have to protect yourself. Maybe you even have to do something like tariffs to some degree. But you have to be concerned about other countries, just for the sake of caring about...
Yeah, how are we going to do that, Johnny? Nobody really cares about anyone but themselves, basically. I mean, we are part of a unit, a local unit in our local area, right? And then we're part of a national unit in our national area. But what do we really know or care about other countries? We really don't. So we have to really care about the principle.
You're not really speaking about yourself, though.
No, of course not. I'm just talking about people collectively as a whole. I mean, we're concerned about what we have to pay when we go to the grocery store, what we have to pay when we go to buy a car. You know, it's important. That's number one, because we have to take care of our families. But there's certain principles that we have to remember and adhere to. And I think if we keep those in mind, the people that negotiate these agreements have to do that in our name. And they're not doing that.
Well, I think actually, you need, in this case, a kind of more global paradigm in order to really solve some of these problems. Because right now, for instance, we're having all these currency wars. Okay. And so we're, for one thing, like we're inflating our money. The government is inflating our money so that they can pay down their debt much easier, which is one of the reasons you allow inflation to take place. You want to control it. Of course, it can affect eventually the domestic situation radically. It's very complicated, but the point is, it is because everyone's thinking of themselves, and it's because what we have in the various countries are people who are in charge who are very much like the people in our country who are in charge. They're thinking of themselves first. But,
exactly.
But I do want to play something by Trump on that parallels Perot to show that Trump really is dealing with a problem, if not any kind of solution. So can I play this?
Yeah.
All this free trade, you know what? It's free trade for them, not free trade for us. We're losing our shirts. And I think free trade's fine. But the leaders of these other countries, whether it's China, $500 billion a year trade deficit with China. What the hell good is that for us? Where does it help us? So you have China, you have Japan, where the cars come in by the hundreds of thousands. They pour off the boats. It's like Mark is driving the car. I've never seen, they come off, you wouldn't drive them. It's too reckless. They come off these boats going like 40 or 50 miles an hour. It's like the Long Island Turnpike or Long Island Expressway. They come pouring off the boats, one after another, and we send them like nothing. We send them nothing. And by comparison, nothing. We have to make smart deals. We can no longer, we're losing. You look at our deficits, you look at our budget, you look at what's going on with this country. We're losing our jobs, and the politicians don't tell you that. I actually think a lot of them don't know. Most of them that do know, they're controlled by special interests that own companies in other countries. They're even controlled by other countries. Countries have lobbyists also. They have lobbyists, they have their donors. It's absolutely crazy what's going on with our country.
And, you know, when you stand up and say, we're going to charge a tax, as an example carrier. So they announced 2 weeks ago, the guy standing is some management person. I don't think it was even the top guy. And he let 1,400 great people, and they had the cell phone going, great people let go. And I said, boy, that's sad. I'm watching it on television. I'm saying, that's sad. Now, folks, I was really a good student at the greatest school, the Wharton School of Finance, and you don't have to go to Wharton. You don't have to go to school. How does it help us to have Carrier go to Mexico, make their air conditioning units in Mexico, let go all of these people, great jobs, they've been there for many, many years, they're great people, beautiful units outside, great people, great stuff. I'm not buying it anymore. I'm not buying Carrier anymore. So they go to Mexico, and by the way, some countries that have pride, they don't buy like products if they're made in America. They want them built in their country, made. Remember we used to have made in the USA, right? When was the last time you've seen it? You don't see that anymore.
I just think that what I hear him saying is, he's criticizing these other countries. And it is really our fault because we don't have people like that, like he's talking about. These deals were not made. It's almost, I don't want to.
They're smarter than we are. They made a good deal and we didn't.
Well, I don't necessarily. I almost think there's something else.
A good product.
Well, a product it's a good point. It's a good product at the price that we want to pay.
At a price that we want to pay.
But we cannot compete with people that are paying slave wages.
Not on certain products. No,
you're right. On high tech stuff, it's a different ball game.
Yep.
Because they have to pay their people a lot too. Because once you start having competition when it comes to higher level thinking and things, and that's probably our thing is that we have to just realize that we're in a different market. We're not going to be able to.
Market.
We cannot compete at the low price, low quality, products anymore. We just are. We're priced out of that market. And so we have to realize that we're not in that market anymore, and we have to revamp our manufacturing base to be in a different marketing sector.
And not only that, we have to revamp our education system to give the people the skills they need. I mean, basically, you can't come out of high school and get a good job anymore. I mean, we've got to rethink that because we've got to put these people in the position where they can get those tech jobs.
Yeah, but how do we deal with the fact that there's going to be a certain percentage of people that might not be able to fit that type of work? I mean, we do have some serious issues.
We do, absolutely.
And I think that in certain cases, we do need to protect, our goods. Maybe it's in the area of manufacturing clothes. Maybe we do have, because a lot of the manufacturing of clothes is using slave labor throughout the world. Maybe it is,
and perhaps it can be done a lot cheaper than it's being done domestically. But I mean, it comes to free market again and pricing and that's why clothes are coming from China. I mean,
but this is where paradigm changes happen. Okay, 3D printing and different types of manufacturing.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could we can start automating our manufacturing and reducing because a lot of the expenses coming in from China or Taiwan or whatever is the shipping. And so now if we can change our distribution channels and we can save costs on shipping and we can save costs on manufacturing, now you're just spending money on design and some of the service stuff, but and then we have close range distribution and it ends up being price competitive at that point. I mean, this is where we have to rethink how we do so. We have to use our technology and our innovation to rethink how our distribution channels work so that we can save that money. Plus, people can get things quicker. They can get it, they can have the options to customize. I mean, sure, there's going to be certain products I don't care about customizing. I just want them as cheap as I could possibly get them. And there's going to be a difference.
No, but that's a very wise comment, sir. I think that has to be done.
Well, for a second, let's hear just what Sanders has to say since we heard from the other guys.
Senator Sanders, I just want to show the audience, you sent a tweet. I want to return to trade. You sent a tweet on Thursday. This is the tweet. I'm showing it to the viewers. It said, "The people of Detroit know the real cost of Hillary Clinton's free trade policies." It shows pictures of crumbling buildings. It seems like you're blaming her for the situation in Detroit.
I am blaming the trade policies. This is an amazing thing, which I didn't know until recently. And I wonder how many people did know this.
But you're calling them Hillary Clinton's free trade policy.
Well, Hillary Clinton and everybody else who supported the trade policies, she wasn't alone. We had many, many Republicans and far too many Democrats who supported these disastrous trade policies. Do you know that in 1960, Detroit, Michigan was one of the wealthiest cities in America? Flint, Michigan was a prosperous city. But then what happened is corporate America said, why do I want to pay somebody in Michigan a living wage when I could pay slave wages in Mexico or China? We're going to shut down, we're going to move abroad, we're going to bring those products back into this country. Those trade policies, as much as any other set of policies, has resulted in the shrinking of the American middle class. And I'll tell you what else it did. It's not only job loss by the millions, it is the race to the bottom, so that new jobs in manufacturing, in some cases today, pay 50% less than they did 20 years ago. How stupid is that trade policy?
Well,
interesting.
It's just, I think, oversimplifying the issue. I mean, he's got a point, but just like Donald on the one side is saying made in the USA, made in the USA, I think, what Sarah was talking about is that we have to realize we're in a world economy, that we are competing with other countries in the world that are producing things, and we have different ability to get in there and compete where the products are coming, where they're going to be coming from. And we have an advantage there, and we have to take advantage of that. And nobody's talking about that. They're just talking about, minimum wages and made in the USA, and it's out of touch with the economic reality of the world economy.
Well, here's something. I go into a local supermarket here, and I see all these, these places where cashiers would normally operate. And then I see a self-service section, and there are at least 10 of these cashier units, right? Mm-hmm. And 9 of them are usually empty because they're using the automation. They're encouraging people for the automation so they can make more money and not have to pay these workers. So when you come up with a solution that involves more automation, you also have to come up with a solution that includes people getting paid for something. So you have a lot of...
jobs are going to change, Johnny.
Right.
Yeah, see, I don't know. The jobs go into making the automation and distributing the automation versus, being a cashier.
It's a runaway train. We're not going to stop it. We have to learn how to deal with it. Jobs are going to change. The way that people make money is going to change. But, I mean, the consumers are going to have to pay for everything anyway, so we're all going to have to accommodate each other in the system. But things are going to have to change.
Some people have said that these trade agreements are deliberate, that they were deliberately downsizing the American economy so that they could have more of a global economy, and so these multinationals could work more efficiently for their own good.
That's no
conspiracy theory for me.
But there's no.
I'm just bringing it up.
But there's no doubt that international corporations want that. They don't.
They want to pay less money for production, of course.
There's absolutely no doubt that that's going on to a certain degree because it's not even conspiracy theory. It's obvious because they're business people. They want to be able to serve the world because there's more of a market, and they want to be able to get the highest quality at the lowest prices. Period. Mm-hmm. And if they can't get it in the United States, they're going to go somewhere else. And they don't see themselves as a citizen of the United States. They see themselves as a citizen of something else. I don't know. The world, and they don't really care about. I'm just being honest. They don't care.
The problem is that these kinds of solutions also cut down on the ability of people to pay for products.
Absolutely.
And so I think that
the middle class is pretty important.
I think that
very important.
What's happening here is that you have people who are so engrossed with their own sort of needs as a corporation or as multinational, whatever. They don't look at the whole picture. And we need a kind of trade agreements that allow everybody to be prosperous.
Well, if you're representing the United States, then you got to make sure that if, for example, with China, what they do is they lower their currency, so it's hard to compete there. But then they also subsidize the industry so that industry can undercut our pricing, right?
Yeah.
We do that. We've done that too in agricultural fields where we've taken over whole industry sectors. I have a show that I did with John Perkins, and he explains, how we've done that to different sectors where we undercut, based on subsidies. And so when we identify that a country's doing that to us, those are the details that we have to pay attention to. We can't allow somebody to undercut us by that because they're going to take over our sector. And that's their strategy. We can't be that naive, and we have to be more astute in what we're doing.
Well, I definitely don't think we shouldn't have compromised our standard of living. Whatever solution we had shouldn't have produced this.
I think also we have to be responsible in negotiating these agreements where we're not bringing in dangerous foods, which we've seen that disastrous consequences of when that happens. We're not bringing in products that are produced by slave or child labor. And, this has to be something we put our foot down on.
Well, and in some ways our quality of life has gone up, and other ways it's gone down, right? We can get goods and things a lot cheaper. We can get certain things cheaper. Our healthcare, our education, our housing, that's all more expensive. Things that are really important are more expensive, but the average daily stuff is less expensive.
Well, let's turn a little bit back to another favorite subject here. Though I'm not personally a fan of Donald Trump and his ideas, I admit to the guilty pleasure has provided me with permitting the often somewhat staid platforms for running for high office to be a virtually explosive treasure trove of the surprising and unexpected for even the most discerning viewer, and a magnet for television ratings that more than equals the best reality show, including The Apprentice. In my case, he has managed to tap emotions like horror, incredulity, shock, outrage, bewilderment, suspicion, panic, and revulsion. For others, to his credit and power, he has struck sensibilities threaded with gratitude, excitement, self-esteem, optimism, including a strong sense of moral and even ethnic superiority and a drive to succeed at any cost. And he's managed to spread his flamboyancy and controversy into all of the campaigns from all these candidates, especially the Democrats. Recently appeared on CNN Town Hall. I don't know if you guys saw this, with his family. Did you see him actually talk with his family, with Anderson Cooper?
No, I missed that one.
Well, I didn't.
Extremely friendly and lucid people. These people, like you were talking about his family before, respecting, supporting him. They made clear that his disposition and manner towards communicating with his family was quite different than his demeanor with other people. Yet, in many ways, Trump's a very smart problem solver and can be quite charming. But after this short break, we start to discuss foreign policy issues, which has stirred up a great deal of controversy, forcing his Republican and Democratic contenders to pay him a lot of attention. So let's hear something about one of his potential initiatives. Here's a famous initiative of him, which I'm going to play something about.
Donald Trump has finally given details as to how he proposes Mexico is to pay for that wall. Remember the wall? Remember when America was great? Remember when Donald Trump wants to make America great again by building a wall and having Mexico pay for it? Well, finally, he's come up with his rationale and the economics behind it. And he's calling to hold Mexico to ransom. That's what he wants to do. He wants to make it illegal for Mexican immigrants to send back money to the families back in Mexico. The statistics are something like $25 billion every year is sent back in wire transfers from Mexican immigrants who live and work in this country back to their families back home. And he wants to make that illegal. He's citing a clause under the Patriot Act to do that. And he says that if I withhold the payment back, the wire transfer of that $25 billion back, and say to Mexico, you give us $8 to $10 billion to pay for the wall, and then we'll release the $25 billion that comes back into you. $25 billion accounts for about 2% of Mexico's GDP. He put all this together in a 2-page memo that he put to one of the national publications. This is what he said specifically. He said it's an easy decision for Mexico. Make a one-time payment of $5 to $10 billion, nice narrow number there, to ensure that $24 billion continues to flow into their country year after year. This is under the memo, compelling Mexico to pay for the wall, and it's emblazoned with Make America Great Again, his logo and that slogan.
Now, here he's talking about how Mexico will pay for the wall. All these people are sending money to Mexico, $24 billion a year. Some of these people have come here and I worked in Coachella for a Spanish-speaking station, which was associated with a rock station.
And you didn't see all those billions going to Mexico, Johnny?
I saw people going and transferring money all the time. They are. And these
but
are
they're
people,
not going to pay for a wall.
Anyway, these people are living on the edge of hardship, and yet they're sending money to their families. And one of the reasons they came here was so that they could send money to their parents or other family from even from a really bad state that they're in at the point where they themselves don't have the proper food, medical help, or a decent livable environment. But it's better than in Mexico, and they want to help their families. But of course, deporting them back would be a tremendous hardship. Now, cutting off all their money being sent home, this could be a terrible situation for these people. Here's a short clip of Your Kisses Never Die, written by myself as lyricist and Edgar Ahrens as composer, and sung by Patricia Welch for a musical in progress called Hadley's Castle.
We must have known this place before, where waves crash cruelly on the shore, and wind carves out remorseful rules in deep shadows on silver dunes. I know your touch, your smell, your glance. This could not be some trick of chance. We whirl around this windswept beach, entranced by love beyond our reach. Your kisses never die. They live inside of me. They linger on my lips like some familiar mystery. Your angel's touch has giant wings that beat against the sky. Your kisses live inside of me, in spite of me. They never die. They never die.
Before our short break, we were talking about Trump's idea of getting paid by Mexico for the wall at the border separating our countries. Well, what do you think of this idea of his idea for paying for the Trump wall by cutting off their income and blackmailing their, basically blackmailing their government?
So stealing from them, basically?
Well, you can't do that.
No.
My husband's from Mexico. He moved here when he was 10, and my whole side of the family, his whole side of the family is from Mexico. My kids are Mexican. So I have a little bit of insight into some of this stuff, but there are some major issues with that border and drugs and violence and things going on. As far as forcing them to pay for a wall, I mean, that's ridiculous.
I don't think there's any legal way to do it.
There are, as my husband says, there are some back-end ways that you could get them to do it. They're just not going to ever
legally
do it. But you're never going, you could do it in some trade agreements and stuff, but they're never going to do it openly in public because they're going to say, nobody's going to admit to doing, it's ridiculous. I don't even know what he's trying to get. It's some marketing tactic he's trying to do.
Or he's just absolutely doesn't care about other people. I don't know if that's possible because he's a very good family man.
Yeah, well, when it came to the
Well,
Muslims,
he cares about his family then, but he doesn't. I mean, the way he talks about the Mexicans and the Muslims, it doesn't sound like he cares for anyone other than the WASP America.
Well, when he was talking about the Muslims originally, he was saying that we needed to let them in because it's a humanitarian crisis, and then he got slammed for it and so forth. And then he came back and said, "Well, we need to figure out the situation first before you let people in."
Yeah.
And so
so
he's shifted based on what the politics of the day was, but everybody does.
Well, I want to go back to the border closing. It's not an exclusive property of Donald Trump. I've just watched a video from the National Association of Border Patrol Officers. In it, Zach Taylor, the chairman of this organization, whose acronym is it's NABPO, and it's designated, and he's also their designated border security expert, describes how much of the border is technically federal lands and how the Border Patrol is prohibited from securing these areas, leaving wide open corridors for criminals involved in drugs and illegal alien smuggling to operate. 62% of this land at the border has unfettered access to private and state property. In 2010 to 11, the Tucson sector of the Border Patrol stated they were apprehending approximately 3% of illegal aliens they know to have entered. Recently, the claims and concerns about illegal border entry is mounting, with the allegations that Middle Eastern terrorists have been able and will continue to be able to penetrate the borders. I'm not able to validate these concerns at this point. What's your opinion? What do you think? Are our borders open corridors to crime and terrorism? Is there truth to the dangers to national security and safety and what we should do about it? How extremely important is this, or is it just mostly talk?
I think if there's a sophisticated terrorist group, they're gonna get in anyways. I don't know if a wall. They could go in through Canada and other areas, I suppose, if you really wanted to get through. But
they could come in through any port of call, actually, Sarah.
Yeah.
Well, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to prevent them from coming in.
They've been trying to prevent terrorism at the airport, but basically it's I don't know how effective that's been. They'd like to cite cases where they potentially saved us from this or that, but I don't know how true they are.
I don't think that would, what's being done there is what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about people coming into this country. And
well, I think what's happening, I went through Canada's border with a group of young girls. They're all like 11, 12 years old, this hockey team. And I couldn't believe how abusive and how rude the United States border agents treated us as we were coming back into the country.
Every time, Sarah, I live in Europe, and every time I come to the States, I feel like a criminal, and I'm a citizen. And, my wife's a Russian citizen, but we're married. So she comes through the regular citizen line with me. And sometimes it takes, they let me through, and sometimes it takes 3 hours to get her through. So, I always feel like, I'm, and you come in with a group of foreigners like Germans or whatever, you come in on Lufthansa and you feel like they're going to put you all in the gas chamber.
Yeah, it is really terrible. The Canadians were very kind and friendly, and they were welcoming us into the country. And then we came back over the border to come here, and I was ready to, complain somewhere because I couldn't believe how awful they treated us, and how, we had these 11, 12, some of the girls were just treated so awful. They have this abuse of power. I don't know what to tell you. I was ashamed that this was our country, and we were all American citizens. There wasn't any of us that weren't, and they were a bunch of little girls.
Yeah.
Well, they're actually, searching toddlers and I've seen.
Well, okay, you can search a toddler and do it in a friendly, respectful manner. These guys
without scaring the hell out of them, but they don't do that.
No.
Well, let's go on more with some accounts of what's going on at the borders from other perspectives. Here's one.
Nearly 9 years after 9/11, the United States is still facing a major terror threat. You may be surprised to learn who agents are catching trying to cross the border from Mexico. We reviewed congressional reports and traveled to the Southwest to find a threat that affects us here in Metro Atlanta. The Border Patrol uses choppers, ATVs and horses to patrol the 2,000-mile southwest border. Most of the illegals caught crossing are from Mexico or South America, but thousands are classified as OTMs, other than Mexicans, including hundreds from nations that sponsor terror. These are the records we obtained at this federal detention center near Phoenix, Arizona. We found illegals from Afghanistan, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, Sudan, and Yemen in custody.
We have left the back door to the United States open.
Former Arizona Congressman J.D. Hayworth has seen the intelligence reports.
And we have to understand that there are people who definitely mean to do us harm who have crossed that border.
This Arizona rancher doesn't want to be identified because he fears the Mexican cartels who smuggle drugs and people near his property. This Muslim prayer rug was found on his ranch.
It's just one more indicator that there's a whole lot more than just a few poor Mexicans coming into the United States.
There's more. This congressional report on border threats confirms members of Hezbollah have crossed the southwest border. It also contains photos of military jackets found on the border. The Arab insignia reads, "Martyr, way to eternal life." The other depicts a plane crashing into the Twin Towers.
I mean, there's no doubt that there's a multitude of problems, but I'm not sure that raising a panic level is going to solve any of those problems.
I do think that we need to really carefully vet who comes into this country. And
I agree.
And the way that we're doing it, at airports and so forth is kind of absurd. But I do think there needs to be a way to do this. And we're probably going to need a lot more people to do it if we're going to do it properly. If we're going to have people coming over, I am completely against banning Muslims or something like that. But I'm not against careful vetting of people. And there's some people that we can't vet. We won't be able to vet them, and we're going to have to keep them out. Maybe have them in safe zones somewhere, or do something to help them. But we don't have the right to just have an open situation. And I am totally against deporting these people, but I am totally against just keeping these open borders this way. Now, here's another example of something that's amazing. Later in 2014, the last thing I played you was about 2010, where he was talking about the Twin Towers and people coming in from all these different countries. Later in 2010, a massive number of children without their parents were let into this country, taking up allegedly a great deal of time away from border guards directing the border. Further, there are claims that there are terrorists, perhaps connected with ISIS, making deals with drug cartels to get into the United States. Terrorists and drug cartels. In this clip from Charles Walton, he discusses the 2014 projections and that say that maybe as much as 60 to 80,000 people could come across the border.
Because of this, these agents are, they're changing the diapers, they're feeding kids, and they're doing all these things, and they can't keep up with it, and then they're having to deal with the disease and the scabies and all this stuff. So they can't patrol our borders properly. And so that leaves the door open to terrorists coming in, drug cartel, drugs, you name it. It just opens a door for opportunity for this to go on. And now there's a new border risk. Apparently ISIS, the horrible terrorist group that we know is, heading towards Baghdad and just killing all these innocent people and rob bank for something like $400 and something million. I mean, this crazy terrorist evil group that even Al Qaeda says is evil considered by them. This is how bad they are. Well, now apparently this horrible ISIS terrorist group has ties to Mexican drug lords. So think about that. Is this some big plan? I don't know.
This is Johnny Bluestar. I've worked as a lyricist with Patricia Welch for over 5 years, along with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens, a friend and colleague. Her ability as a singer is simply amazing. She brings a unique and dramatic flair to every song she sings. Over the next few months, we shall be releasing a number of these songs, part of an album called Hadley's Castle. Meanwhile, Patricia has been busy creating a super enjoyable collection of classic standards in an exciting 46-song, 3-CD collection.
Music for great entertaining introduces Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia Welch. 3 hours of continuous music. 46 of the all-time classic standards, spanning decades of hit songs. Going to a friend's home for dinner? Cocktails, dinner, and dessert with Patricia also makes the perfect hostess gift. This 3-CD compilation is the perfect background music that sets just the right mood for any dinner party.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy.
To purchase this album, just go to patriciawelch.com/CD. That is patriciawelch.com/CD. You won't be disappointed.
Prior to the break, we were talking about multiple people, often improperly vetted, coming through our border. What do you think of that?
I just don't know. I mean, if you're talking about ISIS, they're pretty organized. They've got money. They don't need to sneak someone across the border. They could follow the proper channels and smuggle people in to have legitimate papers. I mean, that's basically how the 9/11 terrorists got in. And like Sarah said, if they're going to get in, they're going to get in. There's nothing we can do about it. We can be more vigilant about keeping, the bad people out. But if they're terribly organized like ISIS is, there's going to be a way to do it.
I saw an interesting account by the person who handled a lot of these terrorists, who was in the visa agency in this Middle Eastern country. And what he said is that these people were let in. He wasn't allowed to really vet them properly. They were just pushed in. That's
what I'm talking about. That's if there's bribes being given to get a visa, and these people are coming in with legitimate papers, then that's where you have to solve the problem, not by putting more machine guns along the border, because the people are just coming in through regular ports of call with legitimate papers, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it except ask them questions.
The problem, I mean, we have so much corruption at every level, and if there's bribery going on, and they can just buy stuff off. There needs to be an overhaul of a lot of things.
Yeah.
A giant paradigm shift.
Exactly, Johnny. Exactly.
And that is a real serious
we can't have a war on this and a war on that. We have to have a war on our own corruption is basically what we've got to do. If we're so fond of doing wars on things, we have to have a war against our own corruption.
That's that's perfectly well stated.
I think we need a citizen rights foundation. Anyway, getting back to what we were talking about, let's go to the big one, the famous one. Just to hear his voice again.
Shall I read you the statement? Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. We have no choice. We have no choice. Mr. Trump stated, without looking at the various polling data, it's obvious to anybody the hatred is beyond comprehension of such a big portion. Where the hatred comes from and why, we will have to determine. We're going to have to figure it out. We have to figure it out. We can't live like this. It's going to get worse and worse. You're going to have more World Trade Centers. It's going to get worse and worse, folks. We can be politically correct and we can be stupid, but it's going to get worse and worse. Folks, those days are over. Those days are over. We have to be tough. We have to be smart. We have to be vigilant. Yes, we have to look at mosques, and we have to respect mosques. But yes, we have to look at mosques. We have no choice. We have to see what's happening. Because something is happening in there. Man, there's anger. There's anger. And we have to know about it. We can't be these people that are sitting back like in the World Trade Center, like so many different things. We can't be people that knew what was going on 2 weeks ago in California. Probably for months they knew what was going on, and they didn't want to tell anybody. We can't be that. We have to be strong. When we see violations, you have to report those violations, and quickly. You don't worry about profiling. I promise I will defend you from profiling. I promise.
I have chosen to end this program with this last quote from Trump, a proposal that in itself dilutes in my mind the value and feasibility of a campaign that prizes its ability to create real change through new or revitalized political paradigms. To me, this proposal is like Abu Ghraib, sending a signal to disaffected Muslims that the United States is not like Islam, creating a further terrorist recruiting tool based on a distortion of the real sentiments of most Americans and their politicians. Secondly, how can we ask our Islamic brothers to fight with us against our mutual enemies if we disdain them so much? Thirdly, how can Donald Trump expect to be a third-party negotiator with Israel and the Palestinians, which he claims he could be, possibly, even though he says this is the toughest deal to negotiate ever? I think he has canceled out his credibility for this negotiation, as well as alienating Muslims in America. The fourth problem: Muslims in America who love and cherish this country are among the best defense against domestic terrorism. Of course, as campaigns go, this proposal of banning Muslims from coming to America was a long time ago. Most recently, annoyed by our expenditures on defending foreign countries, he has called for arming South Korea and Japan with nuclear arms, a further descent into political surrealism. I would like to thank Ken Eade and Sarah Westall for their participation. The biggest problem that I see is what Ken and Sarah talked about, the deadly corruption that lies behind all our efforts for real change. We need an informed and enlightened citizenry to lead the way to create the foundations for real government that represents the true needs of America and planet Earth. And to this end, I ask my audience if they wish to join with me in prayer for the true blessings of liberty, democracy, prosperity, and freedom for all of us. See you next week on Threshold.